Welcome to my views on news, another video for you. First news story is from some areas to the east of Humera town on a Sudan-Ethiopia border, Ethiopia-Sudan border, part of govt Humera. And large fires have been spotted to the east of Humera city. What do these fires indicate? Does it mean there is ongoing fighting to the east of Humera? These fires, data of these fires is shared by NASA. And some experts use these fires data to analyze armed conflicts. Secondly, a protest was held in Humera city a few hours ago, and Colonel Demake addressed the participants there. Another news story is from Afar, where protests against the government have been seen. Zone 4, Zone 2, especially in Zone 2, people are suffering. Anti-government sentiment is rising, perhaps anti-Eritrea sentiment as well. Thirdly, before Eritrean government has responded to 6-country statement urging an immediate end to the war in northern Ethiopia. In the previous video, I spoke in detail about a statement issued by 6 countries calling for immediate stopping of war. So far, Ethiopian government is silent, but Humera Eritrean information minister, just around 30 minutes ago spoke and he seems to be addressing the statement made by 6 countries. What is he saying? And lastly, viewers, another Fano official has been arrested despite the ongoing war in northern Ethiopia. Amhara regional government, Ethiopian federal government are continuing their crackdown on Fano fighters. Firstly, viewers, Humera. Humera town, is under Amhara control, ENDF control. Tigray forces have been trying to move towards Humera from Sudan side of Sudan-Ethiopia border for weeks. And fighting was several kilometers away from Humera city, Humera town. Tigray forces never managed to enter Humera. Now, some fires are being detected. They have been detected to the east of Humera city, between Edigosho and Humera, around 20 kilometers away from Humera, in eastern direction on Tigray-Eritrea border, on Ethiopia-Eritrea border, near Takeze river, these fires have been spotted. NASA shares the data of large fires. It is available online, and some experts use this data to analyze armed conflicts. Because in armed conflicts there are large fires. Sometimes these fires are wildfires, forest fires. So fires are not always indicative of fighting on the ground, but sometimes, yes, these fires do indicate that there is armed escalation on the ground. NASA satellite compiles this data and it is available online. Some experts in Russia-Ukraine war are monitoring the war by analyzing this fires data. So the fires spotted to the east of Humera, between Edigosho and Humera, are these fires forest fires, wildfires, fires made by farmers, or are these fires indicative of some fighting there? Have a look at this map showing the location where fires have been seen in the last 3 to 4 days. You can see the exact location. Location is between, I think, Edigosho and Humera. According to my information, there is no Tigray Defense Force close to these places where fires have been spotted. And I tried to get image of the places where fires have been spotted. You can see some pictures. Large patches of blackened ground can be seen. So either the fires were made by some local farmers who burnt maybe some remaining parts of crops, or there was some armed escalation in this area. I am unable to make a conclusive statement about the cause of these fires, but it would be interesting if there is armed escalation in these areas where there is no known fighting between Tigray forces and Ethiopian federal forces and Eritrean forces. I stand ready to be corrected if someone has better information, because people who live in these areas, they know the terrain as well. Do farmers make fires in this time of the year in these areas between Edigoshu and Humera? Secondly, in Humera town, a protest was held. Protesters chanted slogans against Tigray People Liberation Front, against Sudan as well. They said that Sudanese government, Sudanese military, Sudanese soil, all were being used by Tigray fighters for attacks on Humera. Colonel Demake Zaidu addressed the participants, and he also criticized Sudan's role. We would say, Sajid, when foreign powers tell Eritrea to leave Tigray, that Eritrea is violating Ethiopian territorial integrity and sovereignty, why don't they speak about Sudanese involvement in this war? Yes, this objection is very valid, but Sudanese military is not in Ethiopia. Sudanese military is not in Tigray. Eritrea is actively involved in this war. Yes, Sudan is also involved, but if you compare Sudanese and Eritrean involvement, obviously Eritrean involvement is at a greater scale. Eritrea is fully involved in this war. Secondly, viewers, Afar region where people are angry. By the way, I talked to people from Afar as well, and they are not in a position to express themselves. Otherwise, anti-government sentiment has been on the rise in Afar for months. People of Afar have been suffering, that they stood with Ethiopian federal government, but when Tigray forces attacked Afar at the start of this year, Afar was on its own. There was no ENDF in Afar, and TDF managed to reach Birale back then. Afar suffered, and Afar is still suffering because if there is no banking, no electricity in Tigray, its impact is felt in northern Afar as well, because these people in Birale and etc., they were relying on Tigray. And now when aid supplies to Tigray are suspended, no aid supplies to Birale, the Lol, Kanaba are reaching to. So that is why people there are suffering too, thousands displaced. That is why people are protesting in Afar. You can see some pictures on your screen. They say that Eritrean involvement is hurting the people of Afar. People of Afar are suffering because of this war, which is not their war, but they are the victims of this war. Thirdly, viewers, before Ethiopian government, Eritrean government has responded to 6 country statement issued a few hours ago when US, UK, Denmark, Germany, Australia and the Netherlands issued a joint statement calling for immediate stopping of war in northern Ethiopia. All points mentioned in the statement have already been agreed by Tigray regional government. So the statement is a way of putting pressure upon Ethiopian federal government to agree to stopping of war. Ethiopian government has not officially replied so far, but Eritrean government replied, you can say indirectly. Humera just 30 minutes ago issued a message, a tweet. He said, some powers are making duplicitous pronouncements. These world powers, these countries, they stoke conflicts which are threat to regional security and stability. And with straight face, they condemn people's right of self-defense. So Humera is saying that what is happening in northern Ethiopia in terms of what ENDF and EDF are doing is self-defense. Eritrean and Ethiopian governments both have right to defend themselves. Western countries are stoking, fueling conflicts. So it's clear that Eritrea is not in favor of immediate stopping of war. Eritrea wants this war to continue until TPLF is finished. Ethiopian government is relying heavily on Eritrean government in this phase of the conflict, third round of the conflict. Eritrean soil, Eritrean military, Eritrean generals, Eritrean military assets, all are involved. Question is, can PM Abiy's government make a decision on its own without consulting Isaias Afwerki? And if Isaias Afwerki is against stopping of war, what will PM Abiy do? Will he give in to Western powers pressure and somehow announce start of talks, maybe alienating Isaias Afwerki? Or will he relaunch no more movement like we saw last year, that when there was pressure upon Ethiopian, Eritrean governments, we saw massive diaspora campaign against US and Western powers. Let's see. In coming days, things will be clear. Lastly, viewers, Ethiopian and Amhara government's crackdown on Fano is continuing. This crackdown started several months ago. Thousands of Fano fighters are in prison. Gajam, Gondar Fanos are specifically being targeted, and today Amhara People's Force public relations officer was arrested. Tilahun Abaje is his name. His arrest has been confirmed by Asris Mare Damte, who is a lawyer. He is lawyer of most Fano fighters and dissidents who are in prison. He himself was arrested a few months ago, Asris Mare Damte. Later, he was released. So, campaign to keep Fano fighters, Fano factions under pressure is continuing. Why? Because government forces are not under pressure. They have managed to push Tigray forces out of Wollo. Volkait still under ENDF Amhara control. So there is no real pressure upon Ethiopian government, Amhara regional government. If Tigray forces started making inroads into Gondar, into North Wollo, South Wollo, then we could see Ethiopian government make peace with Fano. So far, government seems to be continuing its crackdown on Fano fighters against and crackdown on dissidents in the Amhara region of Ethiopia. Thank you for watching.